Welcome to Sensitive and Self-Assured. Before we get to today's topic and guest introduction, let me tell you how I know you are in the right place. You feel everything, and somewhere along the way, you started believing that was the problem. My name is Alyssa, a highly sensitive woman who stopped trying to fix herself and started learning to trust herself instead. This podcast is for the woman who edits herself before she speaks, loses herself in relationships, and still quietly wonders if there is something just simply wrong with her. Nothing is wrong with you. Your sensitivity isn't a problem to fix, and self-assurance isn't out of reach. They belong together, and this is where the two meet. This is Sensitive and Self-Assured. My guest today is a confidence coach, spoken word poet, TEDx speaker, and founder of Powerful and Poised. She recently published her first book, Create and Receive, Make and Believe, under her performer name, Patty the Poetess. She's passionate about inspiring and empowering others through the spoken word. Welcome, Trisha Veldman.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am thrilled to have you, and I always love an opportunity to connect with other highly sensitive women. So before we get into all of the incredible work that you do, I would love to start with what your experience of being a highly sensitive woman has been like, and kind of when you first learned that term, and just kind of take it from there.
Yeah. So finding out that I was a highly sensitive person was so liberating in many ways. I think I first saw the term in 2018 or 2019. I was in my mid-20s, and I actually was a newsletter that referred to solely sensitive women. And so I took this course for soulful sense. I forgot the terminology, but it wasn't highly sensitive. It was soulfully sensitive. I was like, oh, that describes me to a T. And then during the course, the woman admitted the correct term is highly sensitive person. And then I took the quiz and scored very high and realized so many things that I had noticed my entire life started to make sense. When I was a child, I went to a psychiatrist for what my mom and I referred to as the irritating thing. And that was that I needed things to be balanced. Like if someone touched me on my left side, I had to touch my right side. If I had a certain fabric, it would bother me. I didn't wear jeans till I was in high school because the fabric just bothered me so much. So then when I discovered that, it was this huge light bulb moment, as I'm sure it is for so many people, to say, oh, I'm not just a weirdo. Like there's actually a reason behind this. And my mom is highly sensitive as well. So she ended up buying the book, and it's been very helpful to discover that.
Oh gosh, like you, when I discovered the term, it was this kind of very liberating experience. And I discovered it about the same time, like 2018, 2019, although I was in my 40s. So what I wouldn't have given to have that language when I was in my 20s, and who knows, how things might have looked different. But so glad that you have the language and you have some understanding. And was there a moment where things like really shifted for you, where you started to see it, that your sensitivities really as a strength rather than something that you needed to fix?
Yeah, I don't know if there was a specific defining moment, but I know that having it normalized and realizing that it could be something good was incredibly powerful, because at that point, I had been working as a public speaking coach, which I still am. But at the time when I started, I was in New York City. I was with this company that was all men, no really sensitive people. And my boss affectionately said, Tricia, you remind me that people are not robots. And he meant it in a good way, I think. But I also realized, oh, I am the sensitive one. And I was always a sensitive one in my family. I was a sensitive one now at work. And so when I heard the term and started doing more research, I realized it didn't have to be something that I tried to hide or something that made me worse than my colleagues because I couldn't work with 10 clients a day, an hour each, like they could and be fine. I was drained after like 3. And so when I realized that it is a superpower to have that empathy and to do, the reason my boss said that was because I would write sweet notes to everybody, or I would be upset if a client was dissatisfied, or little things that I realized aren't so bad. They're showing empathy, and it's nothing against anyone who's not sensitive, but it also can be an asset in so many ways.
I love that so much. So much. And I want to ask you more about being sensitive and being a performer. But first, before we get into that, you mentioned being the sensitive one in your family. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can be really hard when you feel like you're just so different from everyone else that you're really close to. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like growing up and what that has looked like as you've gotten older?
Yeah, so I think I'm lucky in that, as I mentioned, my mom is also highly sensitive. So she never really criticized me for crying or being dramatic or whatever. My dad had a little harder time with it. And I just remember him either making jokes of like, you cry all the time, or being annoyed by it occasionally, to no fault of his own. It was probably annoying. And this, I'm talking about when I was maybe a teenager or a child. And my siblings just didn't really get it. So I'm the middle. I have an older sister and a younger brother, and they're sensitive in their own ways, but neither of them are highly sensitive. But now as an adult and knowing this about myself, my sister, for example, sees that her daughter is highly sensitive. And so she's a lot more compassionate to me in certain ways of understanding, oh, that's why you see things that way. And my brother's just very easygoing. He doesn't care one way or the other. And my dad too, is, since my mom read the book and kind of educated the family about this, he's been a lot more understanding that, oh, they're not trying to be dramatic. It's just how they process things. And so now my dad will even sometimes say, oh, your mother's just highly sensitive. That's why this is happening.
Education and having personal experiences really does kind of shift our perspective in all things, right? Like now that your sister is experiencing being the mother of someone highly sensitive, she's able to relate to you in a way that she couldn't previously. And I think that's why these conversations are so important, is for people to recognize and to be educated and realize how many people they're interacting with on a daily basis who are highly sensitive, and they just don't quite know it yet.
Yeah, and it makes you so much more aware. Like now when I'm working with clients, I can recognize, oh, this person is highly sensitive, so I'll tailor my approach versus someone who's not. And I didn't know that at the beginning of my career. And it's been so helpful. And even with friends or dating or anything, just understanding these cues and knowing how to celebrate that in someone as opposed to not getting it fully.
Absolutely. So working with your clients, and you yourself are a performer, what does that look like? Or what are some of the challenges that you or your clients are facing as sensitive people and performing and just like being real vulnerable and putting themselves out there?
Yeah, so sometimes I feel like a total masochist every time I go to an open mic. I'm like, why do I do this to myself? Because it can be so debilitating, the nerves and anxiety before a performance. I've gotten a lot more used to it at this point, but when I was younger and even just starting my career, even though I had one-on-one sessions, I still felt this sense of performance anxiety, and I would get nervous before every session in the beginning. And that was part of the sensitivity. I think part of it is I wanted to do a good job and all of that. But I did read that there's a subset of HSPs who actually like being in the spotlight. And so it's like 20% of the 20%. And I definitely fall into that category. But it's taken a long time for me to learn how to keep my nervous system in check, because once I'm there and I'm on the stage and I'm doing the thing, it's not so bad. Sometimes I'll like have a moment and kind of freak out while I'm there and have to collect myself. But for the most part, it's fine. And then after, it's amazing, but it's right before. And even not so much now, but in the past, the whole day before a speaking engagement or an open mic, that's all I would think about. That's all I would focus on. That's all I could process. And so it took a lot of breathing exercises. I meditate a lot of pep talks and things just to get my nervous system under control. But I do think it is a much bigger struggle for highly sensitive people to be under a spotlight, which can be very hot. And if you're sensitive to temperature, that's one thing. A lot of these rooms are also very cold and sensitive to distractions. A lot of times when I'm performing my poetry, people will be walking in and drinking and ordering things. And you have to really learn how to not let noises distract you. Noises are a big thing for me. And what I've learned though, is that you can't use your sensitivity as an excuse for certain things. There is a balance to say, okay, I can only do this once or twice a week max, and that's okay. I'm not like other performers who are going every single night of the week, and I don't do late night things, and just knowing your boundaries and your limits, but also training your body to be able to handle it to the degree that it can and have it feel good. Because for so long I was like, oh, I'm not going to do anything like that. That's too terrifying. But part of me really wanted to. And so once I got over that fear and realized it is possible, I just have to take really good care of myself before, during, and after.
I think that right there might be the thing that shifted the most for me once I had language and some real tools, was that I didn't have to avoid doing the things that I wanted to do because of my sensitivities. I learned how to work with them and manage them and not force something that wasn't a good fit, and still be able to kind of push the boundaries of my comfort zone and do the thing within the parameters that feel like right for me and for my body, right? Like I'm not going to have something every night of the week, or I'm not going to, like you said, I'm going to avoid the late night events. Learning how to work with it in a way that that just really aligns and not be limited by your sensitivities, I think is so empowering.
I agree. And I think part of it is learning to be unapologetic about it, because I used to have the energy of like, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't think I can make that event, or I'm so sorry, I can't have this many clients in a day. And now it's, nope, this is my limit. And I realize you don't have to explain yourself as much as I think we as sensitive people feel like we have to. Like, oh, they need to know every single detail about why this isn't going to work for me. And now I've learned just to say, nope, how about this time instead? In a kind way. Obviously, you can be polite, but all of those excessive disclaimers and the apologies for ourselves, I think, isn't necessary. And once we learn to cut that out and to own what we need and be okay with that, and be okay if other people don't understand. So for example, I was out with some friends the other night, and they wanted to go to another bar and order drinks. And I'm not a big drinker because I'm very sensitive, and I like to go to bed early because I'm very sensitive. And it was a relatively new friend, so I wanted her to like me. And at the same time, I just said, like, no, I gotta go. And she kind of did the protest of like, oh, and in the past, I would have let that get to me and been like, okay, I'll go. And now it's just so empowering, and it's such a relief to know that I can trust myself to do what I need to do. And she's still going to like me. She still wants to be my friend. Just because we don't have the same habits, it's okay. And it's okay if she doesn't understand why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you that all of the disclaimers and the explaining and all of that, for me, it came from a place of my own insecurities and my own lack of acceptance. And then when I started to be more comfortable in my own skin and accept who I am and how I'm wired, it was actually shocking to me at first how accepting other people are when you just kind of state pretty, like you said, very kindly, but matter-of-factly what it is that you want or need. And most of the time there's not a lot of pushback, or if there is, there's the minor protest, like you just said with your friend, and then a level of acceptance, and you just move on and you get together the next time.
Yeah. And then as you get to know people, I realize that they understand. Now the friends who know me well know not to invite me to something that starts at 10 p.m. because I'm not going to go. And that's okay. And I think as sensitive people, it's really important to recognize that not everyone will get it, but if you stick with what you need, people will get it. And the people who you want to be in your life will be okay with that.
Ones who don't get it and don't want to accept it, they're not a good fit for you anyway. And it just sort of naturally works itself out.
Yes, exactly.
This is such a beautiful place to pause. We've covered so much ground already, from Trisha's own journey discovering she was a highly sensitive person, to navigating family dynamics, to the very real challenges of being a performer with a sensitive nervous system. In part 2, Tricia shares the philosophy behind Powerful and Poised, her debut poetry book, and one of my favorite insights of the entire conversation. Something that could genuinely change the way you think about your ruminating mind. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, you were never meant to abandon yourself to get through life. You were meant to live it, sensitive and self-assured. Take care.